So John Douglas is my name. I work on the Grass 10 team, and with Joe and John Marr, and I'm joined here by Peter McGuinness, who is Tom's son. Tom, who you met at the first board. Maybe Peter, maybe you was give an introduction maybe to yourself here. Are you working full time here? What's the story with?
Yeah. So home from college there in 2018. Came back came back home then and working in a local feed mill, McNamara Feeds, literally just the other side of the ditch. So yeah, look, it's a good enough work-life balance between the two of them. So
good stuff. And maybe just give us a rundown as what's going on here on the farm in terms of grazing management of sheep at the minute, before we get into pasture base, but just what's actually going on.
Yeah, so all ewes were weaned there last Monday, and we're running a leader-follower system there at the moment. The ewes came out of here this morning, and they're in there next door. What else are you looking for?
So like if looking ahead, I suppose over the next month, what's going to happen, in terms of even, lambs and drafting and things like that, or looking into the autumn time, what's going to happen here on the farm?
Yeah, well, as on the first board, sure, it showed there just getting as many lambs drafted off grass as quick as possible, keeping as good quality grass in front of the lambs at all time, making sure they're not under any pressure. And look, as lambs start going away, demand starts to slip, and then we can start building condition on ewes then coming into the autumn period. We've most of all our pit silage is made now. 14th of June was all the pit silage was put into the pit. We've some bales made, more to do, but look, it's only middle of July now, so definitely that'll be made with ease, and maybe some more to make and bits to sell. But in the last things is after we had good bit of rain here Sunday and Tuesday or yesterday. Before that now things were starting to get fairly tight. Days ahead went down to 9 days ahead. A lot of covers in around the same, but did a walk there today and took out one paddock for silage there today, so things is starting to look up again.
So it's actually gone from sort of being tight there back into surplus again, is it?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so it moves fairly quickly. So how do you keep a handle on that, Peter?
Measuring grass. That's every Wednesday after work or before work, go around and do a walk. And look, you first half is measuring, and the second half is pasture based. Put all your results up, and look, this is what it gives you. It shows you your days ahead, what you're growing, how much you need, and look, then you're just an awful more confident making decisions. You're making better quality silage because you're taking it out at better times. There at the first board, there was the silage we made there this year was up at 16% protein, so we didn't feed any meal to any singles whatsoever, which is a big saving. And then the knock-on effect across everything else. We're just feeding a very small amount of meal, feeding around about 25 kilos of meal, ewes and lambs combined, comparing to 75 kilos of a national average. Break that figure down, and it speaks for itself. It's low cost.
Yeah, and we might come back to that in a minute. So at the moment, then your farm cover an average of 780 kilos of dry matter. Now that mightn't mean much to people who aren't, say, measuring grass. So I suppose what that sort of means is, the average cover on the farm is probably about a fist or maybe a fist and a half of grass. That's about the average, okay? So if you think about your own farm at home, maybe you're going very dry and maybe things are slower, they're starting to take off again. Or maybe, on heavier soils maybe weren't affected, and there's probably, maybe the average is two or 2.5 fists high. And I suppose, we're talking about grass quality and grazing at the 3 leaf stage. We want to keep the average farm cover generally in around 600 to 700, and once it starts to go over this figure, you start to run into surplus. So as you can see here, this is starting to get over, and the days ahead is getting a bit high, and Peter has already made the decision to take out a paddock for silage. So, and what that's doing is basically it's bringing this figure that's maybe drifting up towards 800 back down into the 600 to 700 range, and that ultimately means the reason we're going by all these figures is so those sheep and those lambs are grazing the right grass. So you can see what they're sort of grazing there at the minute and what the lambs are grazing next door. So that's the ideal type of grass you want, and measuring, I suppose, is allowing you to do this. So your pre-grazing yield there is about two fists high on a sheep sward at about 1,300 kilos of dry matter per hectare, and the lambs are grazing down, as we said, to about 6 centimetres. So they're maybe grazing half of this, and then the bottom half of that is being grazed out by the ewes. So as mentioned by Kieran, the lambs aren't under any pressure here, and they're in the paddocks, I suppose, for 3 days. They're not in any longer. you start going longer than that, and you start reducing the amount of grass that you're growing. You start eating the regrowths that are coming up and slowing grass growth. So if you think about it, if I ask you a simple question, does the grass grow more if there's stock grazing it, or if there's nothing grazing it? Obviously it's going to grow more if there's nothing grazing it. So the quicker we can get them in and out, the better. And just to date, so there's 110 units of nitrogen gone out to date, Peter, and you're going with about 20 units protected urea at the minute. Does pasture base help you with fertilizer decisions?
Definitely, yeah. Well, look, when you do your walk and you get your wedge, it shows you, look, as for making good quality silage, but what needs to be fertilised when you're running into a surplus maybe that you don't need to. I would always like to be spreading some little bit of fertiliser the whole way through the grazing season. Just if you don't, that was before we were working with the heifers this last 3 years, but before that, come this time of the year, we'd have silage made and way too much grass. We weren't spreading fertiliser because we didn't need the grass, but it was just going real semi, and lambs it was being kicked out further and further and further. So I suppose they're working well into the system. But no, as regards fertiliser, look, you do your walk, you know when you need to spread it, you know when you don't.
And I suppose some people argue, these bales come at an expense. Do you see it that way, or?
No, look, you're going to need them at some stage, and what did Dad or someone say that there's never a bit that was made that wasn't used, which is a fair point. You'll either sell it or you'll use it yourself. Bale silage here, paddock next door where them lambs was there, there was only 2 bales an acre came off that. It just went kind of strong at the time, and we knew we were going to need ground coming back in there in a while. But we're around about 4 bales an acre, 3-4 bales an acre would be nearly most of the cuts of bale silage we'd make here. Local contract, he only lives just up the road. He doesn't bother him coming down if he's only baling 15 or 18 bales. It doesn't bother him too much if he's just passing, so it works well.
So of the grass that grows here throughout the summer period, we worked it out there before, about half is eaten by sheep, about a quarter by the heifers down below, and then about another quarter is taken up in silage basically.
Yeah. So yeah, we've a beef finishing unit on the farm that we're supplying grass silage to half year round and maize for the rest. So we do need to make a fair bit of pit silage. So
and you're starting to even pull out paddocks as early as April, when a lot of sheep farms that time are running out of grass. You're really pulling some out because you've too much basically, and that's going back to your paddock system and reseed and all that sort of thing playing into. But I suppose that being able to take that out then is ensuring quality throughout the summertime, because I'm sure everywhere here nearly gets cut at some stage, or most of it early gets.
I mean, 80-85% of the farm probably would have some degree of a cut of silage taken off at every during the year at some stage or another. Yeah.
So not only are you making top quality stuff for the winter, you're ensuring that the sheep here are grazing top quality grass for the summertime. And I suppose if they're grazing top quality grass, we maybe come back to the thing you mentioned a couple of minutes ago there, Peter. From the grass measuring, you're probably saving, I think we worked it out, about 50 kilos a meal. Some of that is coming from having good grazing infrastructure and having the soil fertility right and reseeding, but about half of that is coming from the grass measuring. So you're actually saving about 25 kilos, whatever that is per ewe. So a bag of nuts basically, or a bag of meal per ewe is what you're saving by walking the grass once a week. So what is that? I suppose we sort of mentioned, we were joking about it before. We said, like, Peter, because he grass measures, actually has another 120 sheep here. And what I mean by that is he has the profit of another 120 sheep just from the grass measuring alone. That's what it's worth to this farm. So it's nothing to be snuffed at. I'd say anyone would take the money and run. And what is it costing you, Peter, I suppose, to do your time gone into that? What's it costing?
Well, look, I'd say I work off farm, so I come back, I measure once a week. That's an hour and a half out of my week. Measuring 30 odd times over the grazing season. But look, just taking that hour and a half out of your week just to do that job, it definitely pays dividend anyway, so it does. Yeah. Look, before I started measuring, Dad would have always went around on a Monday, go around the quad bike, and he'd look at he'd just go into each paddock just to see what's where. But even there were some weeks there just gone by, growth was up at 100 kilos per hectare per week, and or per day. And you go into a paddock, say today, and it grows that for the week, you wouldn't recognise the paddock then in a week's time. It gets away from you that much. So if you're not in your paddocks and you're not seeing them, you can't make these decisions, and especially during the peak growing times of the year, it will just run away from you altogether. Okay, so definitely worth it. Definitely. Definitely, yeah, definitely.
And what would your advice be to anyone, I suppose, looking to get into grass measuring that's not grass measuring already? Like you came home from college and you bought the first thing you did, you said you nearly bought a plate meter. So what made it so obvious to you, or why did you want to start? Or
Well, during I did an ag degree in Waterford, and there was a time of that was a placement. Went to New Zealand. That was the first taste that I would have seen of grass measuring. And look, I suppose when you work somewhere, you can actually see it working. It's very easy to say, right, that I can take that home. So came home 2018, joined the Grass 10 program with John in the meat dry stock in 2019. And look, sure, everyone here has something got to do with Chagas. So get on to Grass 10. There's plenty of walks and different outings that you can go to. And I suppose every farm that you go to, you're going to take some little bit away from it. It's a bad place that you're going to go into that you won't take something out. Then look, there's loads of advice. Pasture based as well, there's so much on it. There's probably so much that I'm not using on it every year that you're adding another little bit to it the whole time. But look, the lads Grass 10 and Chagas, there's plenty of advice out there to improve everyone's grassland management, really. But
yeah.
sorry, even then the plate meter, as I said, I bought that. I bought a Grass Tech 1 digital, €425 plus VAT. Today, a 20 urea is in around the same. So if you spread that right or spread it wrong, that's almost paid for. And definitely for everything else it gives you after, and then an hour and a half out of my week, it's a small price to pay, so it isn't for long term.
Yeah, so no, that's excellent. I suppose it's allowing you, you have your grass in the spring, you have enough grass in the spring and lambing time, you have quality grass in the summertime, your lambs are gone, you have enough grass for the ewes in the autumn time for flushing, and it just really, I suppose, pulls all the pieces of the jigsaw together on this farm, and obviously at the end of the day puts more money in your pocket. Yeah. So is there any questions on that for Peter?
Just comparing the baling, the silage and feeding meal, what's the price per kilo dry matter? What's the comparison of price per kilo dry matter? Meal and silage. Silage sounds very expensive with your 2 bales an acre or 3 bales an acre. And what is that costing per kilo dry matter?
Yeah, I suppose maybe Peter, do you want to? You might have a cost per kilo of dry matter, but can you put it in any other way? I suppose I suppose maybe ask that question another way. Why don't you leave the fields bulk up and make 5 or 6 bales an acre? At least that'd drop the price a bit of the bale.
On the first board, the silage you made 75 DMD, 27% dry matter and 16% protein. We fed absolutely no meal to any singles, fed very mud fat doubles, fed them no meal whatsoever, and then back to the same figures what we're on about national average. I don't have the figure of a per on a.
I get that one.
Right, yeah, you're good with the figures. But look back, say national average feeding 75 kilos to ewe lamb combined, and we're feeding 25. I think that's kind of the sum there. So it is I know I take your point how the cost of making it, but the likes of the paddocks that we've taken out, they'd be fertilised, but they wouldn't be fertilised for silage. They'd be just fertilised for grass in the rotation. It's not that they're getting a lot of fertiliser, and just coming back to the quality, we're feeding an awful lot less meal at the end of the day, and that's definitely the saving.